Cool, we are live. Greetings from Zimbabwe.
Hello. How are the Khumalos doing?
Hi, everyone. Welcome to our conversation with Angela Makholwa, where obviously I'm in Zimbabwe, as you can see, with my beautiful kimono. And I have the fabulous doctor. Where are you calling us from, doctor?
This is so very awkward because I'm actually calling you from my mansion in the northern suburbs.
And our guest of honor this evening, Angela Makholwa.
From the holiday home in Naisna.
Yes. So hi, everyone who's joining us on Facebook, everyone who's joining us on YouTube, and everyone who's joining us on Twitter. We are absolutely so excited to have this conversation with you today. Today, we'll be talking about critical but stable. So, yes, it's exciting. And I think before we start, and we do an introduction and you tell you about all the amazing things that Angela has done, we are saying to you, we saw on Angela's Twitter and Instagram that we'll be giving away a UK version of the Bliss Girl. I don't even have that. I don't even have that. That's all I'm saying. I don't even have that.
Huh?
Can the cheeky natives enter? I also want to win this one. I want to cover.
There's only 20 copies, guys, in South Africa of this book. And I'm giving away one copy to a lucky. I think you guys must decide what the criteria is or what the criterion is. Yeah.
And in addition to that, because we're also people who love giving away books, the Cheeky Natives, in a collaboration with Pan Macmillan, because Pan Macmillan loves us and loves our readers, we'll also be giving 2 personally signed copies of Critical But Stable today. So stay tuned for our questions, and then you will be part of the people who are going to win the books.
Yeah, be a bunch of winners. We don't want
I see Dorothy from Facebook is already lifting her hand up to whatever is happening and whatever we're winning. So yes, also what's fantastic is you can communicate with us live. So if you have any questions that you want to ask us, please pop them in and we'll ask them at the end of our conversation with Angela. We'll leave an opportunity for questions. So we're excited. I see Libaka is also saying, I claim that book. I'm not sure which book it is, but she's claiming it. And everyone is lifting up their hands. So everyone is really excited about this.
No claiming, just winning. No claiming, please.
So, okay, we're going to read Angela's bio. It's a very illustrious bio, but for purposes of our conversation tonight, we'll just read the back of Critical But Stable. But also to say, the Bliss Girl is published in the UK, and the Bliss Girl was up for an award. It was shortlisted for an award. So you better believe that you gotta get that signed copy because international. Angela Makholwa is the much-loved author of gripping psychological thrillers. Her novels, Red Ink, The 30th Candle, Black Widow Society, and the internationally acclaimed The Bliss Girl are filled with entertaining escapades and sexual misadventure. And today, we'll be talking about Critical But Stable. And this is what Dudu Busani Dube had to say about the book. It's Angela's wit for me. The unexpected twists and turns, the truth in it, things are really critical behind those high fences.
Oh! This book, before we even start, I just want to let you guys know that I read this book in a day so that people know.
Exam.
But Angela, why must you talk about those things?
Okay. All right. I'm just putting it out there.
Since you ain't there. So I was writing exams and it was like an 8-hour exam. So I read from the morning to the evening. And in the meantime, in between exam breaks, guys, I was just like, girl, you better answer all these questions and answer well so that you can read your book in between these breaks. And I just want to tell you, that is how addictive Angela's writing was in the story. I just needed to know what was happening behind those high fences that Dudu Busani Dube talks about.
I would concur with you. I felt that I started the book and I was like, because we have a mandatory 50 pages a day. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to read 50 pages. At a maximum, I'm going to read 100 pages today. And I found myself going to the hair salon with the book and be like, okay, do my hair, but I'm Nike busy. And I was literally like, oh, when even my hairdresser was like, what is going on? I'm like, yo, they are too much for me.
Zillions.
When you said that the hairdresser was going to mess up something in your hair, or you're busy gasping at the stuff that's happening in the book.
No, I was like, I trust my hairdresser. So I was like, it's fine. Now I'm going to be in this book, and when you will do what you need to do. But I suppose the first question is this, Angela. The title of the book is Critical But Stable. Why did you choose that to be the title of your this novel?
I mean, it's quite an evocative title, but it was basically, what I wanted to reflect on in this book was long-term relationships. It doesn't necessarily even have to be marriages, but just the fact that, for couples that are in long-term relationships, there's always, I don't know of a couple that's been together for, more than 5 years or 10 years, where they are not faced with, they don't get to that point where it's either the relationship has to fold or they have to find ways to navigate their way through whatever storms or whatever choppy waters it is that they face with. So, this is kind of in slang, we say, ooh, things are critical but stable, because it's not that this is the end of the relationship, but there is so much, around, there's so many storms around that relationship at that particular point in time, that it really does feel for the two people that are in that situation that, it's either the relationship is going to just end up in ICU and the heart monitor goes off and it's over, or the doctors are able to kind of bring the relationship back to life, So that's the analogy, basically.
I think that I was really interested in the theme of keeping up with the Khumalos. I think that in the age of social media, there are these illustrious lifestyles that I think so many of us are looking at on social media, and you're like, yo, hashtag Sabawal, right? But there isn't a large discussion around what happens behind those high fences. So how do people fund those lifestyles, but also what do they have to sacrifice in order to keep those lifestyles going? And I was really interested in the theme of keeping up with the Khumalos, because in this book you really illustrate that it's just not as rosy as it seems, right? That there are things about what it means to constantly have to have this ostentatious lifestyle, have nice things, the Gucci gang, passport gang. Like,
first of all, the Lamborghinis, okay? The
Lamborghinis, the twin Lamborghinis, hey?
Ostentatiousness, So I really wanted to actually explore that theme of like keeping up with the Khumalos, and what does it mean in our context? I mean, South Africa as a world is like two countries in one, and that's often the analogy that's used, right? That you can have two completely different roles in this one country, and so many of us are fascinated with how the other half of the 1%, So I wanted us to explore keeping up with the Khumalos, and at what cost that ostentatiousness and that lavishness often comes at. Our Gucci gang, matching Lamborghinis, yes.
I just want to say Mandla and Kanyimbawo. That's all I want to say. But Angela, you can go ahead.
Lamborghinis. Okay. No, they were here before everybody else arrived. So look, I mean, it was interesting to reflect on the challenges in a relationship using that backdrop of, these glamorous couples that are working so hard to seem as if all is well, within their homes, within their families. And the interesting thing is, so the book is set amongst a social club of very wealthy individuals, wealthy couples. It's the Msibis, the Jiyas, and the Manamelas. And then there's also other kind of supporting characters. We've got a fabulous gay couple, Paul and Tom, and we have Mam Kumede, who's had kind of a life of wealth for many decades, but she is a firm believer in ubegezela. You know, she's there preaching, you gotta begezela in a relationship if you want your marriage to be successful. And we have other characters there as well, but the central characters are the three families, the Msibis. So the Jiyas and the Manamelas. So these couples are grappling with very major issues within their relationships. But when you see them at the social club, when they interact amongst each other, you know, everybody kind of puts up this pretense that all is well, everybody's happy, they're having a mighty fine old time, and they don't even delve on the fact that there is competition, you know, amongst them. So if this one is going to host a party, a beach party in Zimbabwe, the other couple then, you know, wants to kind of, there's a one-upmanship that keeps that's happening within the couples. The other one wants to host some fabulous themed party and great Gatsby, and you know, everybody's kind of pulling out all the stops, but at what cost? Because, for instance, one of the couples is grappling with a huge mountain of debts that they are not willing to confront, especially the husband is not willing to even talk about it. The wife is not willing to share what it is that she's going through with the person that's closest to her, like her confidant. And so we see how, you know, the social pressure to look like you are doing enormously well, and not only from a material point of view, but from, you know, a relationship point of view, everything about your life is so organized. And we have this character, she's a young girl, she actually works for one of the for the Manamelas. So her mom works for the Manamelas. So she's coming from a completely different world, and she's kind of sitting. So her mom sneaks her into the Manamela home, and she's observing, you know, the comings and goings of this wealthy older couple, and she's kind of our view into this ostentatious lifestyle. So the kind of thoughts that she has, she ruminates over, like, why are these people acting like this? Why are they acting like white people? What is wrong with them? You know? So she kind of gives the men on the street kind of perspective on all this glamour that we see around these people.
Yeah, and I mean, I suppose you it's also a wonderful commentary on how harmful capitalism is, right? So you spoke about one couple who essentially is drowning in debt but doesn't want to confront that thing, right? But also to speak about like how they're very risk averse, right? So they like to take these big risks without necessarily thinking about the outcome of what's going to happen. And I thought that was a beautiful commentary.
Because the people are watching, it's all for sure. Yeah. So I don't want I don't want the Khumalos to see that we're going through kind of a rough patch. It's important to look like all is well and we are thriving. You know, I mean, it's the whole hashtag thriving. And you think about how even those of us, even ordinary people within, you know, in the midst of this COVID pandemic, where we all know that economically we all had hits, but like nobody's gonna post and say, "Oh, you know, hey, some sogolo or whatever." It's hashtag thriving, hashtag, you know. And as you say, it's the impact of capitalism, and it's kind of sickening because in this country, it's not that long that we coming from a place that is the exact opposite of where we are right now. I mean, we're coming from a place where we were all kind of on the same level. And I'm not saying that we should glorify poverty over what is seen as success, but I think we should be more circumspect because it's not that long ago that we were all really, really not thriving, but trying to just get by. And when you think about the people are like, especially with, you know, the middle class, I'm not going to say the black middle class, the middle class in general. Our lives are anchored by people that are still stuck in that cycle of poverty. Like they are anchored by the security guards, which I try to bring those kind of perspectives into the picture. They're anchored by the domestic workers. And if you juxtapose those lived experiences and you see how, they are in such close proximity to each other, we're living in such close proximity to each other, but our experience of life is so different. And you just wonder, is this the only way? Is there another way to be?
I love that you've asked that question about is there another way to be, because when I was reading Critical but Stable, I was thinking the whole time that we need to just reimagine new ways of being, like that our barometer for how we think success is can't be the next flashy, the nicest, the biggest, the best, right? It's like that in the frameworks, but also what does that mean? We don't operate outside of these frameworks, right? So what does it mean to reimagine new ways of being, when you've been deprived for so long, right? But also when you exist in these frameworks that almost sort of demand that of you. So I think about the conversation around money, and I think that the conversation around money is an important one to have. And I think a lot of relationships, it's funny because my husband and I always talk about this, how it's important to have frank conversations about money, because money is the leading causes of divorces. So it's money and infidelity, right? But in this book, you see that not only do conversations around money not happen, but also that even the conversations around money are so informed by patriarchy, right? So the men in this book, in many ways, get to dictate what happens to the money. So there is a couple who have massive financial difficulties, and many of those difficulties are as a result of the husband's behavior. But you also see the way in which they navigate the money conversation is so intrinsically layered, or so intrinsically influenced by patriarchy, that this man feels that he's the father, he's the man, and therefore he should have a say and he shouldn't be questioned, And I found that
he refuses to be questioned for a long time. He literally, it's the elephant in the room. And I don't think that is an unusual situation in relationships. I think that is actually more often than not is the norm. And you see the other couple where, they started out very young, and they've had this very lengthy relationship, and the wife has kind of surpassed their wildest dreams of where they would, like the trajectory of her success is just much bigger than anything that they both imagined. But because they're running away from something, and at first we actually think the male figure is comfortable with his wife's success, but then we realize when an opportunity is presented for him to, get his pants back, which is exactly how he sees it. Like this is my opportunity to wear the pants again in this relationship. We see how he starts feeling affirmed again as the patriarch in that relationship. And these are things that are real. These are things that we deal with, and as much as some men do view themselves as being very liberal, but when it comes to money and who's bringing home the bacon, that is always a situation that gets very, very sketchy when the wife kind of surpasses what the man thought was his role. When the man assumes that this is my role, and it's damaging because it's what's putting so much pressure on our men, even here in South Africa, like in society, even globally, that men have not, it's almost as if they've not had a chance to absorb the fact that because the playing field is slowly being, equaled and leveled, there's a point where men have to release themselves from the supposed burden of responsibility to be the breadwinner, because the world is changing faster than patriarchy can catch up with. Like literally, like the world is catching up faster than patriarchy can even like stop and pay attention and like be like, okay, we get it. Things are changing. So as long as we don't have conversations that are open, that men participate in as well, then we're gonna have this constant trap. That and I think that's one of the reasons behind gender-based violence here in South Africa, is that more and more women are going out there getting work, whether it's middle class or working class women, and opportunities for men sometimes are not as many as they are for women, and the men feel emasculated, and that's how they lash out by being abusive, by trying to reassert their power through using their masculinity. So these issues, I present them in a very light and fun way, but at their very core, it is the South African reality, and that's why I try to kind of lighten it up so that men can also engage with these issues in a way that challenges them, but that doesn't necessarily threaten the world that they know, or the perception of themselves that they've been taught and that they think is the only way to be a man, in society.
I wanted to talk about sexuality. Sexuality is also a really big theme in the book, right? Some juicy bits that I love and some not so juicy bits that I don't like. But I wanted to speak about this. I think that, at least in the South African context, right, this is one of the first books that I've read that actually deal frontally with asexuality. Just the idea of like putting it in and exploring it a little bit more, because we hear about it in the peripheries, right? Like people say I'm asexual, but I see that you really turned it into a story. But it's so interesting for me the way in which you do it. One, the asexuality is there's a lot of commentaries that I believe you're trying to do with the asexuality story. One, we know that predominantly the conversation in South Africa is that men are the people who love to have sex and they always want to have sex. So you have an Mzwa who is like, ish, the thing is I love you, but I don't want it, right?
Yeah.
And then, but also connected to that is the fact that Mzwa is protected, right? Because of patriarchy. So
and religion.
Yeah, and religion. Oh, yeah. And religion. So those two are connected. Because on the one hand, Mzwa is saying, hey, babes, I know I married you. I know we've had sex once or twice, whatever. We have children, sure. But I'm not interested. And I've never been interested, And Kishapa. And Lerato, who is the wife who is at the receiving end of this, like, is just expected to just say yes, right? Lerato goes through so much because she has to pray, she's fasting, she's lingerieing, she's doing all the things to just convince her husband. Because
she's vibrating.
Yeah, she's vibrating.
And being shamed, right? And there's a thing there, I think that you do so beautifully, which is the contrast, right? Because we also look at the power dynamics, even in sex, right? It's like that even sex itself is not exempt from the ways in which patriarchy can steep in, right? So had the roles been reversed, and had it been Lerato who now suddenly, or who came out as being asexual, right? And then said, okay, I don't want to have sex, etc. They would have been.
The expectation she would have probably been the one who, being Lerato also, she would have probably been the one who says, look, this is who I am. I do not enjoy sex at all. And I think there are a lot of women who are like that. Not a whole lot, but there are women who are like that. And so they just look the other way and allow the man to go and explore his sexuality because it is understood. The understanding is physiological. Men are hypersexual and women are just receptors of sex. And for women, for the longest time, it was perceived that for us, the sexual experience is all about childbirth and, all of these things. And so it was very interesting to explore this dynamic where the partner that does not want to partake and who clearly said, he's quite firm about it, like that, this is just not my thing. And I actually did a lot of research amongst the asexual community because asexuality is something that's not very well understood. People think that if you're asexual, that you wouldn't have any romantic feelings towards anyone. But there's asexuals who they call themselves like they are romantic, but they're asexual. And then there's aromantic asexuals who just don't have romantic feelings towards anyone or anything. And so it does happen that men or even women find themselves in a relationship where they've got genuine feelings for this person, but they just are not sexually attracted to them. And so you can imagine in this instance that Mzwandile uses religion as a cover to immediately co-opt Lerato into this idea that now we are going to have a chaste relationship, because after all, we're Christians, you know, and chastity and abstinence is something to
we will see the face of God more clearly because we are now clouded by our carnal desires. How carnal are you, Regato?
Mandile was just so.
And he shames her. I mean, immediately she feels like, oh my goodness, there's something wrong with me. Why am I like this? You know, she thinks the devil is the devil.
But you also realize that, like, we are such a sexually. I find the conservativeness of South Africans so interesting, right? Because I know that we have sex. Like, we know that we're having sex. Everybody around us knows that South Africans are having sex. But the ways in which South Africans always feel so flabbergasted when sex is spoken about, like, you know, it just, everybody had sex the exact number of times they have children. So if you have 2 children, you've only had sex twice. And that's it, right? It's like you just don't have sex. But also, I was interested in the sexuality of older women, right? Legit, my friend who is a doctor that I saw the other day said that she has 2 siblings. Her parents have 3 children. She said, yeah, you know, she just, no, what, her parents don't have sex. They only ever had sex 3 times. That's why they've got 3 children. I was like,
to be honest, when I was a kid, that's exactly what I thought. I thought, okay, my parents have 3 kids, so they had sex in 1976, 74.
But you know what's interesting?
Stop, because older women have needs. Right? Older women have sex, and I think that this was great because there's a conversation there about the sexuality of older women, right? Like that often gets shunned. So people are comfortable with the ideas that their fathers have sex because your father can be 60 and there'll be a 5-year-old that pitches up from somewhere that they know. But there is a thing about the shaming of older women's sexuality. So older women are expected to just be chaste. Your husband died 15 years ago, so it means that you just have not had sex for 15 years. And I think it manifests.
It's a big thing in South Africa, hey? It's a big thing. This perception. And it's not just a perception, it's an expectation as well. Yeah.
I think even say that she's deprived when about, so she's just struggling to just even articulate with hey,
yeah. Then you know what happens when that happens? You end up having sexual fantasies about Mr. Bean, which is
hey man.
But also, what has also been interesting is also the commentary that I think you were seeking to make about like sex is not only for reproduction, right? Sex is pleasurable. Because Lerato's character was really someone who brought it to the fore, right? That I'm a human being, I'm an older woman who wants, I have feelings, you know, I have hormones and I want these feelings to be satisfied, right? And in the beginning, Lerato, like the good woman that she is, because, you know, patriarchy, she's really like being like dutiful, praying, thinking there's something wrong with her, and even to some extent, you know, taking matters into her own hands, literally, right, by using a vibrator. And then the husband shames her to be like, hey,
shames her.
You are having sex with an inanimate object here. How dare you bring disgrace? He literally enters the room and he says, fornication. And I'm like, Mzwandile, you don't want to put the thing in the pudding. And now what must happen?
What must happen? What must happen? Huh?
But I think you also subtly are bringing in a conversation about people being okay with self-pleasure. I think to link to Alma's earlier comment about conservatism in South Africa, we also are people who don't talk openly about self-pleasure. You wouldn't just declare on as you go around, hey people, you know, I have 5 vibrators and each one has a different shape and a different color and a different day, because society shames you. So I wanted to talk a little bit about that, right? This idea of bringing older women's sexuality, but also the idea of toys and of self-pleasure? Why was it important for you to, in subtle ways, bring that conversation to the fore?
Yeah, no, because I know that, I've experienced it and seen it, that, self-pleasure, it's as much as, words like vibrator are creeping into the lexicon of ordinary people. There's still the sense that, it's said, there's always like these little giggles that accompany it. So it's giggles of shame, giggles of uncertainty. I'm not sure if, this is something I can talk about, in polite society. And with older women, especially because there's this expectation that if you're widowed or if you're divorced at a late age, at a perceived late age in your life, you're supposed to just be this clean woman. And I think what is said about it is, we know in our African societies that a woman is supposed to take about 3 months or a year mourning, for instance, the death of a husband. And even if it's a divorce, we don't expect you. I mean, if a woman gets remarried like within a year or 2 years, it's like, ooh, a huge scandal. Ooh, she must have been hiding this guy behind the closet or whatever it is. And it's what saddens me, aside from those perceptions and how biased they are towards women, is that, even if a woman then chooses, the path of supplication and deciding to take a year off dating or whatever it is, it's still frowned upon that she would go and seek pleasure, self-pleasure, as we say. It's still something that would make a woman of a certain age to be perceived as being kind of deviant, sexually deviant in some way or other. And yet we know, especially amongst us Africans, that it is perfectly normal, not only for a man to have multiple relationships while he's married. Side chick is like a day-to-day term. It's normal. It's almost an expectation. And so how do you then, what is supposed to happen to these women, and why are we shaming women for being sexual beings, and why is it so important to highlight the fact that as a woman, after 40, 50, just close that cookie, lock it up, put it away in a shelf, and be a great mom and a great grandmother and a great everything else. Like what, how, like, kanjani, huh?
I to change by the ways in which, guys, people get to the birds and now they call it a social club. Like I was sitting there, the first few pages, I'm like, you society this thing, or like, what's going on, right? You society, they're like,
it's not fair.
It's not fair, because they're like, oh, yeah, at the social club, I'm like, but so you society, right? So I was just thinking, I was like, what's going on here?
Yeah.
I mean, I found that really funny. I think that there's a thing that happens when people begin to move up social classes, in which, and I think that you were speaking to that, right? In which people realize that they still need community, and we've always kept community and we've always needed community. But there's this anglicization that happens, so Eastokfel say we social club. Now you guys are canapes, like you're not just visiting, but also how everybody, like has undaba zabantu, that lady that or that man that it's just like the headquarters for Ditaba. And it just, if you want to know what happened last week on the streets, you just go to that house and you just get caught up, right? And you see Umakumete, like she is like undaba zabantu,
no.
she's like
anything for first dibs on the hottest gossip. She'll do anything, literally.
I love that, right? Because I felt that you also paying homage to that even as we move up social class or social strata, there are things about us that are just our things, like that are not related to your LSM. Like if Utandindaba, whether you're doing it in Gucci or you're doing it in Deep Blue, full stop.
Whether you're doing it in a sauna or you're doing it in a tavern?
I wanted to speak again about sexuality because guys, please forgive me. Like, sexual. Sexual.
Guys.
Come
There's
on!
a, if only there was someone to have it with, but anyways. Oh.
Family friendly. Oh, please. I'm very young.
I suppose another question that I have is, you introduce Tom and Paul as these sort of supporting queer gay characters who come and join the social club, right? On the one hand, you do this to sort of shake things up in these heterosexual homes, right? Because you've got really like patriarchal men who are very like religious and very cultural. And in many ways, they are not comfortable fully with the idea that these two men are in a relationship. But you also do it as a juxtaposition. Yeah, the juxtaposition of these heterosexual marriages and this queer marriage, right? Because in getting to know Tom and Paul, we also get to have a conversation about ethical non-monogamy, right? Which we know in many instances that straight people would straight out just cheat, right? Instead of having conversation about the fact that I potentially want to see more than you. And I wanted to talk a little bit about that, right? They don't have a perfect relationship.
Yeah. What's the question?
Oh, I said they don't have a perfect relationship. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay. They don't have a perfect relationship, but the relationship that they do is filled with communication in a way that the other straight relationships don't necessarily. And it feels like communication as the bedrock of their relationship is really why they've been together for such a long time. And I wanted to talk about that juxtaposition, right, of these heterosexual lives that are seemingly perfect behind these high fences. But when you enter into their homes, you realize that, ooh, kushubile, right? But you have these other, let's call it non-normative relationship. And in this non-normative relationship with ethical monogamy, with communication, it's really like, man. And I wanted to speak about that juxtaposition. Why was it important for you to do that juxtaposition?
I think before Angela answers, there's also like a beautiful scene that actually also where you have their anniversary celebration and you have Duke being just problematic, just being thuggish, and
Duke, in other words,
Duke just being a problem. And Duke is making faces, he's grimacing, because there's a thing there, but there's a commentary that you make there, right, about the ways in which queer couples are not allowed to show affection, or the ways in which, like, you know, that like patriarchy, that heteronormative way of thinking means that even in the comfort of their own home, right, they're celebrating their anniversary, but Duke doesn't want them to hold hands, and he's been here spanking his wife and doing Lord knows what the whole time at that event. And I think that was such an interesting juxtaposition, right? That even when you are wealthy, even when you have moved up LSMs, there's still a way
you're accepting.
Yes, where people are accepting, right? Where people are accepting and they are tolerant.
We're accepting, but no, don't kiss in public. Don't touch in front of us. So So it was very interesting for me to explore the dynamic, not only between. I underplayed. I didn't place Paul and Tom's relationship, front of center of the society and all of that, simply because the book starts, the opening chapter of the book kind of paves the way to the narrative. We've got a dead body. There's a man. The dead body is a female. So there's something happening. So whoever we're going to encounter, who is central to the story, has something to do with that dead body, right? So that those were the central figures, the central characters. But what I wanted to do with Paul and Tom's story, as you rightly say, is just to underline how pretentious the whole construct of monogamous heterosexual relationships. And the reason I'm using the word pretentious is because for the longest time, heterosexuality or a heterosexual marriage is supposed to encompass the principle of monogamy. Everybody's supposed to be faithful. Everybody's supposed to, until the man strays. When the man strays, then it's like, okay, man, we know we're asking too much of you because you're a man. So we'll look the other way, but like, don't do it again. Then you do it again. It's like, and then until it's kind of like, okay, well, let's just let it be. It is what it is. You are going to stray because you're a man. But with Paul, he says, so for instance, there's this interaction between Paul and Lerato, and some of the women in the social club. And he's like, of course you're gonna, when you see somebody who's attractive, your partner may flirt, may be interested, maybe he doesn't really take it to the top floor, but he's acknowledging that it's almost the expectation that this person, you're talking about ethical, what did you call it? Ethical monogamy.
Non-monogamy.
Non-monogamy.
Yeah, that would be better if it was open, and if it was open and we knew, for instance, Norma knew that Duke did his things with whomever, but it was an open thing that they talked about, that they navigated as a couple, and surely that kind of open communication would render a different outcome just in the relationship as a whole over the long term. So yeah, that was and I deliberately used Paul as kind of like the instigator to say, guys, if you guys are busy cheating on each other and doing all these things, maybe there's another way you should be looking at this thing, Maybe there's another way you could be looking at this thing.
I loved the relationship between Mushidi and Lerato. I think I'm fascinated by sisters.
Me too. I'm fascinated by
one have one of our own, so potentially fine.
I can be your sister. I will be your sister.
Please be my sister. I wish I long for one.
I'm always interested in the relationship. I think relationships between women in general are very interesting to me. I think that they are the most interesting kinds of relationships because we know the kind of relationships men have. While cis-het men have very flat, very superficial, very pretentious friendships. Mm-hmm. So we're not even, you remove them from the equation. But I am very interested in the relationship between those two women in this book. So Mushidi and Lerato are very, very different, right? So these two women who are just from like different ways of thinking. Mushidi is ostentatious, she's blingy, she's really like, she's arrived, she's made it. And there's an appearance that she has to keep up. But Lerato, much the same, also has an appearance to keep up. She's obviously a little bit more, she's less ostentatious. She's not ostentatious at all, but she's very religious. They're each constrained by different things. But even in the fact that they are so worlds apart, there is a kinship and there's a friendship there, and they're able to confide in each other in ways that you would not think that women who have such different lives would be able to do, right? And I think that there's something just so beautiful about that relationship. And I wanted to talk a little bit about that because I really am interested in sisterhood and the friendship between women.
Yeah. I think she is. I think Mushidi is the yin to Lerato's yang. In a lot of ways, they are soulmates. In a way that they're almost not with their partners. The way that the depth of their relationship almost surpasses the kind of kinship that they have with their respective husbands. But the other, I think, point I wanted to underline is that even in those very close, very confident, like where they both confide in each other, it's a strong camaraderie and everything. But there will still be that one person in that dynamic, especially when we keeping up with the Khumalos, for whom the illusion of perfection is more important than even the kinship. So it's in a very subtle way, but it's there, where you see, Lerato kind of just gushing about everything in her life, everything that's going wrong and everything that's going right. And you do get the sense that with Mushiri, as much as she loves her sister and she's willing to share in her travails, she holds back a lot when it's her turn to kind of talk about the things that are not going so well, in her life. So with excuse me?
No, I was just saying, do you think that that's also related to the idea? And I think it's something that we've explored, I guess, during lockdown, the idea that there are people who just always have it together. So there's always the strong friend, there's always the person in the partnership who has it together. So they're the ones who have their lives together, and that is their lifelong mission, I guess. And that's the thing, that's the role that they play in their relationships, and there isn't a space for vulnerability. So not necessarily just perfection, but it's sometimes the roles that people slip into.
I do agree with that. So I think with in Mushiri's case, it's a bit of both. It's a there's so much going on in your life that I want to help. I want to be here for you. I want to solve this problem, because that's who she is. She's a problem solver by nature in everything that she does at work, at home. She's the one who's fixing the world for everybody, So there's an element of that. But also I think what happens in that dynamic is that she kind of starts having a God complex of sorts, that, nothing's going to fall apart where I'm involved. Whether it's my life or whether it's the lives of the people around me, I'll always have everything kind of stitched very neatly together. And as long as I'm steering the ship, everybody's gonna be all right, And I think a lot of women, even though it's commentary on her A-type personality, but a lot of women, especially those who are running homes, businesses, work, all of that, you start having this burden of responsibility on your shoulder that, as long as you're there, you've got to be there for everybody, for the friend, the sister, the kid, the husband, the whole planet, and also it's not necessarily fair for women to put so much burden on your shoulder or on our shoulders. It's not really fair to feel that we've got to stitch up, everybody's lives and make sure that everybody sleeps peacefully at night, whether it's a husband or a sister or a friend or children, or it's a lot. It's a lot.
Now I'm back to sex again.
Let's talk about sex, baby. Again.
I'm back to sex. I definitely want to say that one of the best moments for me in the book is when Lerato, after many, Lerato was and then when she unleashed, Wabana, that moment when Lerato met Lawrence and then they had sex, I was like, yes, Lerato, yeah. Yes.
I love that scene, right? I mean, the dynamic is interesting, and I'm interested in that, Angela. Right?
Talking about the other ladies and their things that were happening. You see, now you're creating the wrong perception. As if Lerato.
No. I mean, all the ladies. Those
who haven't read this book, everybody has their little smaller skeletons.
No.
That's the thing.
I think it's important to say that the other ladies do have some, interesting stories but I think what makes Lerato interesting is, of all the women, Lerato is the least likely because of Lerato's religiosity, because of the good Lerato that people expect of her. That when this happens, I'm like, Lerato, it is what you deserve, right? But more than that, I think it's also an ownership of Black women, older Black women owning their sexuality, right? For a long time, it would have been like Lerato would have been docile and would have stayed in that sexless marriage because she loves her husband. She's a devoted Christian, and at least he's not cheating, right? And that's the barometer. That's how low the bar is, right?
Yeah.
But I think what you tried to do with the Lerato character, particularly Lerato owning her sexuality, is to say that women have needs, right? And like in the same way that men are supposed to go out the marriage to satisfy their needs, Lerato going out of the marriage. Actually, you know what? Like, I mean, we can be all like religious about it, but like that man was not gonna have sex with her. What was she gonna do? She had to. She had to.
She's still attractive, right? Because there's a thing there about the ways in which Black women get seen, right? So we're always just seen in these
or
one
not seen,
ways,
or not
right?
seen.
We're not seen, right? So you spend, and I mean, I'm always interested in the concept of race because I just feel like with Black women, the only time you ever get raised is when you're in your coffin, you know, but then you're an ancestor and people are coming still wanting things. So I don't know if you're even raising. But like there's a thing about the ways in which we are seen or not seen, right? So you are always under the tutelage of someone. So you're either always under your father's guidance, you are his property, then you become your husband's property, and you're always infantilized in that way. But also that you are just mammy, so you're always the mom, right? You always mad.
I wanted to get to that point that from
that, you know?
Yeah, if you think about it, if you think about the evolution of a Black woman's courtship to the point of marriage and children. So the only time that you're allowed to be a sexual being is during the courtship. After courtship, when we start coming to get lobola for you, you've got to be in your duke. You've got to be wearing, either heavy clothing or a blanket or whatnot to show that you are now no longer ichichi. You are now a mom. You are now being primed to become a mama. You know. So even the steps that get you, oh, keep it to mama.
Mama guys. Halala. Yes, I just had to show what Mama Wekaya looks like.
That already so immediately back kipeli lobola. I was say you're no longer a girl. You're no longer some sexy little thing that somebody's gonna look at with desire in their eyes. You are immediately co-opted to the role that you are being primed to play, which is the mommy role. You even get given a name, Uma Keys, Uma, you're a mom. And you step out, last week, boy, but now you can't find my select these are mamzo. Hey, Mama Zala, Oza, and you're probably like 29 or 30. You're now a Mama Zala immediately. So there is that sense that your sexuality starts taking a completely different meaning the minute you become somebody's wife. And that meaning has nothing to do with pleasure. It has everything to do with being primed to now, build up a home, bear children, be an aunt, be an advisor, be the sage person who cannot in any way be associated with sex. And so it's not remarkable that a lot of our moms and our older women feel that, the streets ain't for them, So that's why I'm saying there's this. So that's why it's even a thing that a lot of women, if they come out of marriage in their 40s or 50s, they literally feel like they've got no business looking for love or sexual pleasure. They've done their bits, they've raised the children, they've built up the home. Now it's time to just start this new chaste period in their lives, which is insane because that's not what's expected of men at all.
We could go on and on about the book. I know that from just the conversation we've had, that everyone is going to grab a copy of this book. And because, we are the Cheeky Natives, we already have signed copies available at the Cheeky Merchant. So if you would like to buy a copy, we're going to just type up our website so that you are able to buy it and get a signed copy. But to give you a taster of the book, we can ask Angela just to to open the book for us, right? Just to read the first page of the book so that you are already know what you are up for.
Thank you.
So I'm going to do this. I'm going to first make you so that you are the only one on the screen, and we'll come back in a moment.
Okay, cool. The body. He stares at her quiet, peaceful face. So much love in that face, such passion. This woman embodies everything he ever envisioned love to be. She's caring, intelligent, sensual, sensuous, a beautiful person inside and out. Looking at her now, that body underneath those covers, that body's the same. How strange to be thinking about its eroticism at this moment. This is the thing about his body. It always betrays him. Even now, the shame of it. Yet here she is, voluptuous, smooth, perfect, naked in his bed. The thought stirs something in him. Unbelievable that his body can be responding so rudely in the circumstances. He collapses to the floor, weeping. Can it really be over? He thinks of all the good times they've shared, oh, the laughs, the kisses, rubbing her feet, the passion. The remains of their meal are still there. There are empty wine glasses on the table. As his heart constricts with loss, the tears roll down his face. He is a heap of grief. Suddenly, a new emotion takes over. It is fear. What is he going to do with this beautiful body now lying so still and so finite in his bed? He will have to call someone. An ambulance? No. Too late for that. The police? No, no police, not for a man like him. Her husband? And say what exactly? Oh shit, oh shit. What has he done? That's the opening chapter of the book.
I mean, what has he done? What's happened? And that's how Critical but Stable opens. Thank you so much, Angela, for this fantastic conversation. We're now going to spend some time opening it up to the people. If you have any questions, I just wanted to share one comment from Facebook. Kanyesile Zondo says, in a previous webinars, Angela did mention that Critical but Stable is layered when compared to other books. I love how you've unpacked this in this conversation. And I just want to say, and now, obviously, because I talk about sex all the time, I was like, let's such a mood. Let's talk about sex. But BB on YouTube says, loving this conversation. I think we've also had a wonderful conversation. So we're going to give away books in between asking questions. I will allow Dr. Slay to ask the first question.
Okay. Am I ready? Let me just fix my throat. Excuse me. Okay. So I was gonna make this a very hard question, but for the international book, man. But I also know that guys, it's been litty. COVID has had everybody. So I won't make the question hard. But the question is actually quite easy. It's which international prize was the blessed girl shortlisted for? If you don't know, and I want the full. I want the full title of the prize. Ne, angfuna my acronyms, angfuna my abbreviation. Full title. I said what I said. Insert that meme.
Okay, nobody, and it's first type, first win. So it's first come, first serve, right?
Yeah.
So you can let us know. In the meantime, if
in the next 2 minutes, I'm keeping the book.
Now I want to end.
Collector's item, guys. When I'm dead, this is the book you will auction for like a lot of money.
When the borders open so I can go to the UK, and you're saying I didn't want.
So I want to say, for those people who are watching who have any questions for Angela, this is your opportunity. We will first wait for this one to be won before we move on to the other ones, right? So please, anyone who's saying anything. Angela, while we wait, I suppose I have a question for you. Okay, we have a winner. BB on on YouTube says women, comedy women in print prize. That is correct. That is it. So you, congratulations. BB, can we please ask you to, I think BB won the previous book as well. So BB, if you are the same, BB, just holler and say, I won that book.
So focused.
But BB, if we don't have your details, please can you DM us or can you send us an email and then we'll make sure that the book is gotten to you. And so, Angela, before we ask the next question, one thing I wanted to know, was there a character that you disliked?
In this book?
Yeah.
I really didn't like the Duke, hey? I don't like him. I don't like him. And people love him. People love him so much. I don't know.
So problematic.
People love the Duke. I've got no time for him at all.
He is toxic. Hashtag.
He is toxic. So, no, I know who you don't like. I know who you don't like.
Who?
Mzwandi.
Yo!
You don't want to talk about sex. That's what I talk about.
Throw it all away. Throw it all away. Look, I want to say to the listeners, right? Like, we've just scratched the surface of Mzwandile. Mzwandile is actually very trashy. So when you buy the book and you read the book, please can you DM me to tell me your feelings about Mzwandile, because Mzwandile a trashy human being. So BB is right. So BB says, Yaks, I feel so greedy for entering. Yes, it's me again. No. Don't feel greedy, BB. We love giving away books. So this will be the next book as well. Dr. A?
Don't feel bad, girl. You are a winner. Don't feel bad. Beyonce doesn't feel bad when she wins all those awards. Don't feel bad, girl. What would Beyonce do? She'd win everything.
Are we moving on to our next question? I think, look, let's make it easy. Let's make it easy. Just to get a copy of this one, let's make it easy. So you just need to tell me one thing, right? Actually, yeah, okay. Angela has 4 books before this 5th book. Please, can you tell me what her debut novel is? I'm making it that easy. Tell me what her debut is, and then you will get the book. What is the debut of Angela? And Badile earlier. When I read your bio, when you listen, you will hear. Okay, we've got a winner from Twitter. Yes, it is Rent Inc. That is the debut novel. So can you please send us a DM with the name that you would like to get signed on the book, as well as your cell phone number and your address, and then we'll get the book delivered to you, signed by Angela. Okay, we see there's no more questions, but to be ready for the buka. Let's wait for if anyone has a question, please let me know.
Get the book.
We've got one more copy left, ne? We've got one more copy. I've got a nice question.
Go ahead.
Okay, so let me just prepare myself. So I want to know, yes, we know Angela is an author and has written 5 books, but Angela had another vocation in her previous life. What was this previous vocation that inspired one?
No.
You can 1 minute. If you don't answer in 1 minute, I'm coming up with another question. I'm gonna be Rakhadi today.
Okay, don't you dare, please. But Angela, we hope that you've had a wonderful time with the chicken.
I really have. I really enjoyed it. You're so spicy though, guys. Yo.
Oh wow! Your mom says, and Alma's mom on Facebook says, Alma, you took my book. Now I can't ask questions.
Oh my word!
I took her book to get signed. What is going on? I took her book to get signed. I have her book because it was being signed. Hey.
Okay, so there's a
Can you see
like
the
can you
Zondo?
see Zondo on Facebook says Angela was a journalist. Do we confirm this, or do you want to be more specific?
I'll take journalist. I'm feeling kind.
Fine, guys.
Okay,
How-
okay,
Why
cool.
is it so mad, people?
Congratulations for winning a copy of Critical but Stable. Again, please can you send us a DM on Facebook with your details, so the name you'd like to get signed, your address, as well as your phone number, and we'll make sure to deliver the book to you. Unfortunately, that is the end of our competition. For those of you who've really enjoyed this conversation and want to get yourself a signed copy of the book, The Cheeky Merchant is the place for you to get it. You can go to www.cheekynatives.co.za/shop. We've also put it in the comment section, and just type in there, click, say buy, pay, and then it will be delivered to you. If you buy tonight, maybe you'll get it tomorrow. But yes, please, no PDFs, no Matikubong Kadime. Can we support Black writers in South Africa?
Please.
Please can we have another conversation with Angela, because now my mother is hacked that I had her book to get it signed and she can ask questions.
But thank you so much. Go.
We'll definitely say that we will have another more lengthy conversation with Angela.
Yes, once everybody's read the book, so we can get into the juicy details.
Yes, you see, we wanted to entice you into the book, but now when we release the podcast, you will get the in depth. My feelings about Mzwandile, you'll get them fully. I will give them for free.
Yes.
This is what Bokamoso Book Club says. Buy the book, people are some belief. Thank you so much, Angela. This has been an absolutely wonderful
so much fun. Wow, I really enjoyed the conversation, and thanks for everybody who joined in and participated. So let's get the book so we can have juicier discussions.
Yes, reprints on reprints on reprints. But I mean, just to give Angela her flowers, book number 5 for Angela, and this is an amazing, amazing feat. When you think of how our publishing industry sets up, when you think of writing and publishing books in this country, this is an amazing feat, and it's so exciting. I just remember reading, I think I read The 30th Candle first. I don't even know why. Probably because the Wits Library didn't have books, but it's okay. But I remember reading that book and being like, oh my goodness, here's this woman writing about people who look like me. This is so exciting. And it's such a beautiful and powerful thing that you've done, that like women of all ages, but particularly Black women as well, can see themselves in books. So the fact that my mother is on this live watching and is feeling something about this speaks to the type of writing and the ways in which you've really made an audience of Black women feel seen in their books, right? That we can also have things, that we also have fights with our husbands, that our lives are also interesting in the most mundane ways possible. Our lives are also interesting. And there's just something so beautiful about that. So I really want to give you your flowers. I am looking forward to the multiple reprints that this book will have. I'm so excited to see what the future holds for this book, but also for all of your books, right? So I know that people will be introduced to you with Critical but Stable, but will then go on to read Red Ink and The Black Widow Society and 30th Candle and just fall in love with the kind of writer that you are. So congratulations, book number 5 is no small feat. We can't wait to see what the future holds in store for you.
Thank you so much, guys. Please add.
I just want to say that Dorothy has already ordered some books from the Cheeky Merchant, and now is please add Critical but Stable to my shopping cart. So we are so grateful when we're able to, more importantly, hold conversations with Black writers in South Africa, in Africa, and the diaspora, but also to hold conversations to show that we understand as the Cheeky Natives that writing can often be a solitary journey and a solitary work. But us having these conversations is sort of to honor the writer and say that we also know that writing is important, but we know that the amount of work that you put into the book is why we created this space. We often felt that a lot of reviews by our white media about Black writers sort of miss the plot completely, right? So even when I liked someone's comment earlier saying that Angela in a webinar mentioned that this book is complex, and the Cheeky Natives was able to bring out that complexity. I really like the idea because that's the truth. Like, our books are not just books. Like, our lives are not just lives, right? We also have things, and Critical but Stable also allows us to enter into a particular part of the world, right? Where we know we live in these high fences and we see these people in the restaurants, and often we want to know what their story are. And Critical but Stable, although fictionalized, comes close to what some people's stories may be. So thank you so much for that, Angela.
Thank you so much, guys.
Such a cute comment. Sorry, Angela. I just saw this comment. My mom's like, I'm finished reading Red Ink. Because if you've read Red Ink, you know that it's quite a thriller. And it's very, very realistic. And my mom was saying, oh, she's like a bit scared to finish reading it because it just feels very realistic. She feels like she's seeing Moses everywhere. But I love that because it also speaks to that people will read Critical but Stable and then want to see all the other work. They realize that this is such good writing.
Yeah.
Again, no, it's wonderful. Yes, Angela?
No. I was just commenting that what you're saying is spot on. I find a lot of people who first encountered my work through The Blessed Girl, went back to the backlist and uncovered my older work, and it's incredible because they're like, okay, now I want to have the whole collection. So it's just heartening as a writer to know that the journey has been worth it, and that these are the stories. I mean, I remember when I was younger, I've always been a voracious reader, but there was just nothing that reflected our reality. So it's so incredible that I'm one of the many writers in Africa who are able to gift us as a people with that sense of being seen, with that sense of being acknowledged, with that sense of just representation. Representation is just, it matters. It's so important. It's so affirming, and it's incredible being part of this fabric of history that is really reasserting the Black identity in such diverse and incredible ways. So thank you that it's resonating with people.
So Bukamuso says, I might do a cross-night experience with Critical but Stable. Soma vandag. Well done, Angela Makholwa. And I also think for our watchers who are still with us, if you want the full collection that includes Red Ink, The 30th Candle, Black Widow, The Blessed Girl, and Critical but Stable, message us as a Cheeky Merchant and say, hey, Cheeky Merchant, I really would like to get all of Angela's books, and we can make it happen for you. We can make it happen for you. We are now a bookstore, so we're able to get books for you. So that's really exciting. But everyone, once again, thank you for joining us on this Tuesday evening and for journeying with us as we, journey with the people who are Critical but Stable. Again, Angela, congratulations on your 5th novel. And we wish only the best for you. Good night, everyone.
Yeah.
One more time, Critical but Stable.
Woo! We are critical, but we are stable.
Bye.
Bye, guys.